A very good evening to you from wherever you're watching us on this 18th day of July 2023. Trust you're doing well. So much has happened in the country, and we're here to bring you up to speed with just that. And news just coming in before, of course, we get started is that Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki has ordered the closure of all day primary and secondary schools within Nairobi and Mombasa counties over alleged threats of attack as Azimio protests are set to begin tomorrow Wednesday all the way through Friday. But first, as is our custom, let's take a look at our top stories tonight. Azimio alleged formation of special police units to execute protesters ahead of coalitions-led 3-day protest. Kenya secures another 141 billion Kenya shillings IMF loan. Chief Justice Martha Koome appoints a 3-judge bench to hear the case challenging the implementation of Finance Act 2023. And in sports, Team Kenya hit camp ahead of the upcoming Under-20 Commonwealth Games held in Trinidad. Welcome to the broadcast. Steven Sobiambo is our sign language interpreter tonight. My name is ODIDA, and we are live on our social media platforms at KUTV_Kenya. That is on Facebook and YouTube. And later on, we'll be having a conversation on the state of the nation with Ruth Ambogo and Advice Mundalo later on in the broadcast. But first, we begin. Now, Azimio la Umoja, One Kenya coalition has confirmed that its planned nationwide anti-government rallies will go on starting tomorrow. Statement read by Eugene Wamalwa, Kalonzo Musyoka and Martha Karua, the leaders are alleging formation of a special police unit tasked with taking out protesters. The Azimio politicians, whose security has already been withdrawn, are also claiming that they are being trailed by people riding in unidentified vehicles.
With just a few hours remaining to the 3-day protest called by Azimio leadership, coalition principals have confirmed that the protest will go on as scheduled and are not perturbed by the threats, including security withdrawal.
Withdrawal of security, Azimio confirms that the protests planned for Wednesday, tomorrow, Thursday, and Friday this week are on as earlier announced.
In his statement, Kalonzo alleged that their Subaru vehicles, each with 5 occupants, on assignment to eliminate Azimio leaders and supporters. He linked the occupants to murders witnessed in Mlolongo.
Mission of OSU squad is to assassinate or grievously harm Azimio leaders and Kenyans protesting against harmful government policies. OSU is a squad Kenya Kwanza resolved to cooperate with. Supposedly,
the coalition further alleged that government has set up an illegal police unit to take on protesters. They have also pleaded with neighboring countries to deny Kenya Kwanza government military assistance during the protests.
Ruto is at war, not just with Azimio, but with the entire Kenyan population, especially those who do not support him. We appeal to our neighbors in the region not to join Ruto's war against Kenyans. Our neighbors must not supply Ruto with tear gas and ammunition to fight Kenyans.
Azimio has also taken issue with reports that a crisis meeting held at State House last Saturday sanctioned pro-government protests to counter Azimio mass action. Karua also revealed that some of them are being trailed by unknown people using unidentified vehicles.
The meeting held at State House last Saturday was clearly a planning meeting. It came up with a clear command, control, funding, and mobilization of resources and people structures for purposes of carrying out genocide. According to the opposition politicians, police officers on leave have been recalled to deal with demonstrations. Azimio, however, urged the law enforcers to remain professional while urging their supporters to remain peaceful during protests. Jacob Okello, KUTV.
Now, a round of civil disobedience spanning 3 days non-stop is set to ensue tomorrow as the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition remains unmoved in its position to keep on the protest despite threats from the Kenya Kwanza leadership. Azimio protests have attracted reactions from home and abroad. A coalition of ambassadors and high commissioners attached to Kenya released a statement today calling for dialogue between the warring parties in a protest that has seen the death of 15 people since its inception.
Azimio rose with the government may hit a high note tomorrow as preparations are in full gear for the 3 days non-stop countrywide protests. The opposition party has defied all warnings, calls, threats and intimidation by the government and vowed to stand strong in the protests.
We have received intelligence that in fact senior police officers in the Kenyan Police Command have chosen to ignore the illegal directive that was given by CS Kindiki for police officers to shoot protesters. And that is the reason why the president convened a PG, because he knows the police will not do his dirty work. He has now told his own members of parliament to mobilize people in their constituencies to come and harm protesters.
Leaders high and low in the Kenya Kwanza regime have let out their rage on Raila Odinga and his brigade, equating opposition protests to national anarchy marked by massive destruction of property and hooliganism. The government has vowed to do everything in its power to thwart the planned protests.
We must have a candid conversation about what amounts to demonstration, because we cannot continue to use the excuse of demonstrations to destroy property, public or private.
Maduka yalikuwa yanavunjwa na kuibiwa, wananchi walikuwa wanadungwa kisu na waandamanaji, na ndiposa tumesema kutoka sasa katika nchi ya Kenya hakutakuwa na maandamano na vurugu tena.
Azimio's nationwide protests have its impact cast in stone, with 15 people losing their lives since the beginning of the second round of anti-government demonstrations. This impact has captured the attention of the diplomatic corps, with a contingent of ambassadors and high commissioners attached to Kenya, expressing sadness with the loss of lives and destruction of property. In a joint statement, the ambassadors acknowledge the prevailing economic hardships engulfing the country, but call for diplomatic deliberations on the matter, offering to mediate for a peaceful solution. Nanaweru, KUTV.
Kenya's Secondary School Heads Association National Chairman Kahi Ndimuli has expressed his fear that the 3-day Azimio protest starting tomorrow will disrupt learning in schools. At the same time, former Kilifi County Member of County Assembly candidates are among a section of Kenyans calling for a ceasefire to ensure all sectors of the economy don't take a hit. Dorothy Musyoka details these concerns.
The Raila Odinga-led protests are facing opposition from some Kenyans. Kenya Secondary School Heads Association Kesha National Chairman Kahi Ndimuli is warning that learners in secondary and primary schools will lose close to 20 and 14 learning hours respectively for the 3 days. To avert this loss, Kahi Ndimuli has requested President William Ruto and Azimio leader Raila Odinga to resolve their issue peacefully.
So I just want to appeal to all of us as Kenyans to find a way to resolve any challenges that we are facing as a nation.
He has urged both protesters and anti-riot police to keep off schools for the safety of the learners, referring to last week's incident where tear gas was lobbed at a school in Kangemi, causing harm to some students.
I'd like to ask all of us whether we are demonstrating or we are trying to block the demonstrations to ensure the safety of the children, the safety of the teachers, and ensure that schools are a no-go zone.
Meanwhile, former Kenya Kwanza candidates in Kilifi County led by Philip Mbadi, who vied for MP position, are imploring on Azimio leaders to call off the protests, which have slowed businesses and taken lives.
Kwa hivyo tunajua hizi ni hila za kisiasa na tunawaambia kwamba wasitishe maandamano, wasituletee vita, wasituharibie biashara, wasiharibu amani, manake mahali ambako hakuna amani, hakuna kitu kinaweza kuendelea.
The former candidates are now calling for a ceasefire to avert any future destruction of property.
Ni vizuri naomba wale watu ambao wanajua wanajali Kenya na hata giende pale pabaya wasitishe hii maandamano, watu wazungumze kama watu ambao wanajali Kenya yao.
Ningeomba viongozi wenzangu wale ambao walichaguliwa kwenye viti na sisi ambao hatupata bahati ya kupata vile viti, tuweni kitu kimoja na tuzingatie amani, na tuweze kuambia watu wetu, supporters wetu, kuwa amani ni muhimu.
Politicians and civil rights groups at the coast have vowed to lead demonstrations in the region as directed by Azimio leadership. Dorothy Musyoka, KU TV.
Right, keep in mind, as I had told you earlier, that the government has this evening ordered all-day schools in Nairobi and Mombasa counties to be shut down ahead of this week's anti-government protest. This was said by Education Cabinet Secretary Ezekiel Machogu and his Interior counterpart, Kithure Kindiki. Now, Migori clergy, under the umbrella of the Interreligious Council of Kenya, has now pledged their support to the demonstrations, citing that it is allowed in the Kenyan Constitution. The clergy, led by Reverend Charles Otigo, have asked police officers not to use extra force while maintaining peace and order. The clergy has asked President William Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga to embrace dialogue to maintain the country's peace.
We equally appeal to the police to refrain from using excessively force and appeal to aggrieved demonstrators to desist from provoking the police.
Maandamano imekubaliwa kufuatana na sheria zetu na katiba zetu za Kenya kuwepo. Kwa hivyo kikubwa tunaomba amani kwa vijana wetu na wale watu watakuwa wakiandamana iwe na amani sana.
We therefore wish to encourage all our elected leaders in government and opposition, led by President William Ruto and Right Honorable, to enhance the culture of dialogue.
Now, in other news, Kenya intends to spend the newly acquired 141 billion Kenya shillings International Monetary Fund loan to shore up its economy and build the country's resilience to climate change. The IMF Executive Board on Monday signed off the loan facility in a new funding that could ease pressure on Kenya's finances as the government seeks to bridge the gap between its budget and the funds available for use. Here's Joseph Oyomo with that report.
Kenya has secured 141 billion shillings loan from the International Monetary Fund. The latest loan, which was signed off on Monday, is expected to shore up the economy with some 56 billion shillings channeled for that purpose. A substantial amount is intended to finance climate change reforms. The global lender further approved an extension of the fund and credit arrangement from the current 38 months to 48 months through April 2025 to give Kenya more time to implement necessary reforms. IMF Deputy Managing Director Antoinette Saye, in a statement, acknowledged Kenya's resilient economy even as the country faces severe drought conditions and a challenging global financial environment. She urged the Central Bank of Kenya to take appropriate measures to strengthen reserves and defend the foreign exchange market while allowing for exchange rate flexibility as a means of absorbing shocks. The new loan follows another 70 billion shilling syndicated loan Kenya obtained from a consortium of lenders, including Citibank, Rand Merchant Bank, Standard Chartered, and Standard Bank. Kenya's public debt stood at 9.6 trillion as at the end of April 2023, and President William Ruto's government plans to borrow an additional 718 billion shillings in the current financial year to bridge the budget deficit. The government currently faces a deficit of 720 billion shillings, with the government looking to finance 586 billion shillings from domestic market, while the remainder will be sourced externally. Joseph Oyomo, KUTV.
Justice David Majanja will serve as the presiding judge for the case on the Finance Act 2023, and he will be supported by Justice Lawrence Mugambi and Justice Christine Meuri. The bench presided by Justice Majanja is expected to determine the petition filed by Busia Senator Okiya Omtata, Eliud Matindi, Michael Otieno, and 4 others. The petitioners want the Finance Act declared unconstitutional, arguing that there is no concurrence of both speakers of the National Assembly and Senate on matters relating to counties. Further, they have urged that the tabling of the finance bill, now an act after President William Ruto assented to it, was done without following due procedure. The 3-member team will start working on August 1st. Pastor Dorcas Rigathi is on a tour of Israel for benchmarking purposes on health villages, a program that provides a home set-up treatment and rehabilitation centers for drug addicts. Pastor Dorcas plans to set up similar health villages programs in Kenya. She has credited the initiative for its holistic approach, which seeks to remove the mentality of enslaving addicts, but rather initiating them into independent lives. Lynette Maina reports.
On course to roll out a health village program for treatment and rehabilitation in the country, Dorcas Rigathi has visited Israel for benchmarking through an invitation by Wellbeing International Global Advisory Group, an organization aimed at rescuing young people from drug addiction. Speaking during her tour in Far Izun and Yemen health villages, Pastor Dorcas Rigathi has lauded the program's treatment approach of incorporating home setup for treatment and rehabilitation services for 5 to 8 months, saying that it offers hope for youth in Kenya.
And I believe that the kind of treatment that is going here, it's a holistic kind of a program that addresses the individuals in an in-depth way. Open, it is not a hospital, it is not a boarding school, it is a place, it's a home where the people who come here, they go out having been initiated into a life that is of independence. They just are free. If you look around and you see the kind of therapy rooms that are here and the people who are here, it's just a wonderful place. These are homes and health villages that help the young people and even the middle-aged people to be able to recorrect their lives and redefine themselves, and they become a people who will be able to be productive in the communities.
Orit Shapiro, CEO of Far Izun, has expressed her willingness to support Pastor Dorcas in actualizing the Health Villages plan in Kenya, a program that has proven to be a success in Israel.
We are more than willing to help and give any guidance that you need in order to open a place like that at Kenya. And our house, our home is your house, is your home. It's our pleasure. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we will have partnership and collaboration.
In reference to globalizing the Health Villages program, which also offers skills to the recovering youth, Wellbeing International Global Advisory Group Professor Yossi Arel says,
is very exciting to me because we're sitting here and we can already imagine how to translate the models and the principles and learn from success and tailor it and adapt it to be culturally sensitive to Kenya and be able to do a pilot in Kenya and then spread it out to the rest of the region.
Pastor Dorcas Rigathi has been on the forefront in empowering the boy child, efforts which have seen more than 120 youths currently under rehabilitation, a number which is expected to rise if the Health Villages program is successfully enrolled in Kenya. Lynette Maina, KUTV.
All right, 20 minutes past the top of the hour. We are taking a very fast short break at this point. We're coming back with an interview on the state of the nation. Stay with us.
Kenyatta University will hold its 53rd graduation ceremony on Friday, 21st July 2023 at the main campus along Thika Superhighway. KUTV will provide live coverage of the graduation ceremony from 8 a.m. The graduation ceremony will also be streamed live on KUTV, KU website, Lola app, and all KU social media platforms. For more information, please contact the Office of the Registrar Academic on 020-870-3092 or 0786-335-111 or visit the KU website on www.ku.ac.ke. Kenyatta University, transforming higher education, enhancing lives.
We are all seeing the impacts of climate change. In Kenya, for example, the floods, the frequency of the floods is becoming more and worse. The amount of people and livestock we're losing.
The level we need to go is the level where the normal mwananchi and also the government stakeholders can uptake the solutions.
Those small acts multiplied by millions of us will help make a difference in the world at the end of the day.
It's just a slight behavior change that we need, and you find that it serves us a bit more than you put in. And that's the goal. We want to live a better world than we found. Because at the rate we are going, it's dire.
We will secure the planet for future generations.
Technology, science, innovation, ICT and research. These are the ingredients upon which the solutions to the 21st century problems are founded. In a world that is rapidly changing, it's all hands on deck to ensure a balance in all fields of life. Women, young and old, are also in the front line, breaking the glass ceiling, becoming thought leaders in the larger tech space. Not forgetting other societies marginalized. And when the tech Avengers come together, we inch closer to a much safer, efficient and sustainable world. What we view as a norm in today's advanced world was just an idea, and for nostalgic reasons, we trace back the iconic days to bring you the retro tech. On Tech Innovation Show, we encapsulate all the pillars of the fourth industrial revolution, decoded in a language, all for one for all. Every Monday at 8:30 as we push the mantra, keep learning something new each and every day. Only on KUTV, a new experience.
Kenyatta University will hold its 53rd graduation ceremony on Friday, 21st July 2023 at the main campus along Thika Superhighway. KUTV will provide live coverage of the graduation ceremony from 8 a.m. The graduation ceremony will also be streamed live on KUTV, KU website, Lola app, and all KU social media platforms. For more information, please contact the Office of the Registrar Academic on 020-870-3092 or 0786-335-111 or visit the KU website on www.ku.ac.ke. Kenyatta University, transforming higher education, enhancing lives. Are you an aspiring media practitioner, a graduate, or you just want to advance your skills in television production? Then welcome to Kenyatta University, where education meets innovation. KU TV, the premier university television station in Kenya, is now offering short courses in TV studio, field technical operations, and video editing. Through these courses, you will acquire hands-on skills on camera operations, media production, lighting techniques, audio-visual editing, and sound and visual control, and how to operate key equipment in modern TV control room. Enroll today at KU TV and discover your full potential in cutting-edge TV broadcasting. Graduates of these courses will receive professional certificates. For more information, visit our offices at KU TV Studios or call us on 020-870-4252 or 020-870-4255 or SMS us on 0739-110-544. KU TV, a new experience.
Abraham tells you that God has sent him and he has marshaled up a few followers. Then God tells him, now take a knife, slaughter your son. Do you think you will categorize Abraham's acts as religious or cultic?
Right, welcome back to the broadcast. You're watching KUTV Primetime News, and before we went on a break, I'd mentioned that we will be having a conversation on the state of the nation, everything that is taking center stage in the country, and everything in between. And I had hinted that I'll be joined by Ruth Ambogo, that is a lawyer, and Advice Mundalo, UDA Youth Jubilee Youth Party leader. I don't know if that is still the case. We're going to hear that from the hostess mouth. All right, now welcome to KUTV. Ruth, I understand this is your first time here.
Oh, it's my first time here. Not at KU. At KU, I think my debut at KU was back in 2016 when I was doing some mentorship programs here. So, but here at KUTV, it's definitely my first time.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
Advice, you are back.
Yeah, I am back.
All right, now I want us to...
And before you go very far, I would want to clarify, you have just promoted me to the party leader.
Youth party leader, that is why I said, I want you to tell us yourself.
Yes, the position has not changed. I still remain the youth chair of the Jubilee Party.
Despite the reshuffle that has just been done in the party?
There has never been a reshuffle in Jubilee.
Really?
Yes.
But right now we see that Kanini Kega is now the Secretary General.
That was not a reshuffle.
What was that?
That Kanini Kega, together with the Honorable Sabina Chege, acting party leader and acting Secretary General, as per the decision of the National Executive Committee of the party.
That happened.
So that awaits the NDC for ratification.
That happened last week, but before then, I understand that former President Uhuru Kenyatta was the chair.
Not the chair. Former president was the party leader of the party. A position that no one took away from him. A position that expired naturally because of the law. Because after 6 months, as a former president, you cease to hold political party office. So that was the position. So as per that, many people think somebody took away the position from the former president. That is not the case. The position of the former president expired after 6 months after he left office, and it was decided by the NEC that it was right then for them to have acting leadership, and that's how Honorable Sabina Chege became the acting party leader of the party.
All right, now the statement "enough is enough" has been trending for the better part of this week. That is yesterday, and today it has been, I think, #1 on social media platforms. I would want to know from you, Ruth, that is a very intimidating statement, if I do say so myself. What do you make of it? And I understand this is in line with tomorrow's protest that is going until Friday. What do you make of it?
Intimidating would not be the right word to describe what Kenyans truly feel. You know, when a person expresses how they feel, one using the words intimidating would be to invalidate the true feelings that people truly have within their hearts. And for me, the statement "enough is enough" is a statement that is actually true, given looking at the circumstances that we are in, or rather circumstances we find ourselves in as a country and as a people. We are at one of the worst economic times ever. Ever since we got independence. We are now currently living under harsh economic times. Putting food to the table has become a hassle for so many people. You know, people who could afford bread on a daily basis in the morning can no longer put bread to the table. For some of them, they can no longer afford 3 meals a day, which is the recommended number of meals people should take during a normal working day. For some, it is as difficult as completely not affording to put food to the table. And when you get to the point where people who live in a country cannot afford to put food to the table, the most basic of needs, then trust me, when they say enough is enough, they truly mean it. It is not a statement meant to intimidate government. It is not a statement meant to intimidate anybody for that matter, but it is a statement truly expressing what we do feel. So if you ask me, it is a genuine statement coming from Kenyans who feel the brunt of the economic times, who feel the inadequacy and incompetency of the government to handle their issues, and who feel the betrayal of a government that they voted for on the basis of so many promises that have now been put to the backpedaled, and other issues are coming up. You know, new laws are coming up that don't reflect the promises that this government made to the people of Kenya. Yes.
Advice, what do you make of "enough is enough"?
It's a double-edged sword, because we have people who are saying enough is enough in terms of the cost of living is too high. And we have also people who are saying enough is enough because we have those who also feel that the opposition has been able to take this country through this maandamano struggle every other time. And so we have people who are saying enough is enough. But be that as it may, what matters right now is for us to be very realistic as a country. And the place we are in, many Kenyans, if not all, are struggling today. The cost of living is high, and that is the truth. You are seeing the fuel prices have now hit where they have never hit since independence. But then the practicability in solving these problems is the issue, because most of the political class is not interested in the solution. We had issues with the finance bill. When the issue of the finance bill came up, one person, Okio Mtata, went to court, and the courts were able to stay the implementation of the finance bill. And that was a practical solution. Nobody was hurt, nobody died, nobody went to the street, no shop was closed. That's a practical solution. But you look at what the opposition is doing, and most of the time, it is what I would call dancing on the graves of the problems of the Kenyans. Because when you have a finance bill that is supposed to go through parliament, and you cannot marshal numbers in parliament, but you want to marshal people in the streets, when you know technically that there is no solution in the street, the solution is in parliament. But don't go there, you go to the street. Now today we are having the high cost of living, and it's true. And it's not a problem that has come today. We have not woken up to a high cost of living. Remember, I, together with the rest of the Azimio team, during campaigns, there was high cost of living. Yes, it has worsened now. But what did we tell Kenyans at that time? Because as leaders, we must be consistent. We told Kenyans at the time that the high cost of living was because of the war in Ukraine and Russia and the after effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. And that was the truth. Now today, just because we are not government, we now want to shift the blame and say the high cost of living is purely because of President William Ruto. I think that will be a double-edged sword. That would be not being very sincere with Kenyans in the first place. So in as much as there is a problem in the country, the Kenyans must look at are the leaders really looking at practical ways to solve the problems? The mandamano that is being called for, just because we'll have mandamano tomorrow, people will not open their jobs, the dollar will rise, the economy will cringe once more.
Because of mandamano.
Remember, exactly. Now we are having an opposition that is saying there is high cost of living, and the people are actually struggling. When you have mandamano, it worsens. The dollar tomorrow will go up, but the cost of living, will it come down? No. There will be no solution. At the end of the day, we are going to have an escalation of the tension, which is extremely unnecessary. And most of the effects of these things are squarely on the young people. In the last mandamano, close to 20 people died. And those were lives of young people of this country. Tomorrow, we want to still have this story again. My question is, at the end of the day, somewhere, there will be a conversation between the leadership of this country. There will be a conversation between President William Ruto and Right Honorable Raila Odinga. And there will be an agreement. My problem is, why can't that agreement come early enough? Why must Kenyans die? Why must the young people of this country keep dying, and then we talk in future? And remember, all those people who died, we know none of them by name. But when there was a threat to arrest a leader in Busia, the arrest was not even made. There was just a threat to arrest a leader, but all newspapers carried the headline. But when 20 young people died, no newspaper carried their names.
Before we come to that, okay, Ruth has something to say.
Well, I would actually just like to pick up from where he's left, that, you know, a lot of young people have died, 20 young people have died. And it is a narrative that, you know, the government people and people who are sympathizers of this regime that is truly oppressing Kenyans will make, without necessarily apportioning blame to who has led to the death of these young people that we are talking about, and whether those deaths are justified in the first place. Why can't they take ownership and own up and say the police were under instructions to kill these young people? And now also to talk about the practicability and impracticability of mandamano. When government sympathizers talk about practicability or impracticability of mandamano, I ask myself the question, when the founders or the creators or the drafters of the Constitution were writing the Constitution and Article 37, inserting the right to assembly, the right to picketing, and the right to demonstration, at that particular point, did it ever occur to them that at one point this would be impractical? Because we need to be sensitive to the fact that the right to demonstration is a way of expressing yourself, that it is one of the last resorts to try and get the government to have an ear to the solution to the problems that the Kenyans face. The right to demonstration in its creation was brought about having in mind that in the future there could be a government, and I think this is the kind of government they were foreseeing, a government that completely disregards the voices of Kenyans, a government that completely turns a blind eye and ear to the problems that Kenyans face. And therefore, because there was that envisioning of such a government, they said that then let us give the citizens an avenue to express themselves. One thing that Kenyans need to understand, and it is a narrative that government is pushing, that mandamano is not a good thing. We are forgetting that for a very long period of time, back in the days when we were beginning to fight for our rights, and I'm not talking about just Kenya only, globally speaking, when the blacks in America were fighting for their freedom against slavery, they demonstrated. When women such as Susan B. Anthony were fighting for the rights of women to be able to get the rights to vote, they demonstrated, you know. When the likes of Martin Luther King Jr. were fighting for the rights of the black men and women, they demonstrated. So why is it that now, when it comes to the Kenyan context, when we are trying to demonstrate against the high cost of living and a government that doesn't listen to its people, it suddenly becomes something that we should shun away from? So we should be able to make Kenyans understand that it is a constitutionally granted right, and it is a right that was envisioned because it was supposed to be a voice for the minority. It was supposed to be a platform for people who feel as if they're not represented, get an opportunity to reflect and express themselves, and be able to, basically just speak about what they feel is not being heard when they feel government is not hearing them. And then also, let's talk about advice here, talking about, how opposition goes to the streets and they had an option to speak in parliament. Opposition strongly spoke in parliament and voted against the finance bill. I wonder what the government saw that was so beautiful within this finance bill, when Kenyans already, even before the voting took place, Kenyans would express themselves and tell their leaders that, look, if you vote for this finance bill, we are going to vote you out in the next election. And these were not just Kenyans who are allied to the opposition side of things. These were Kenyans speaking from all political inclinations. People who are pro-government, people who are against government, people who are in opposition. All of them spoke in one voice and said, this finance bill is going to hurt us more than it will be of benefit to us as Kenyans. But the leaders of government, or rather leaders from government allied parties, such as his coalition, I don't know whether we should call it Jubilee A or Jubilee B, just seemed to turn a blind eye to Kenyans, a blind ear to Kenyans' problems. So when leaders who are elected turn a blind ear, especially those who have the majority of numbers in parliament, turn a blind eye to the problems that Kenyans face, what exactly do you expect Kenyans to do? Do you expect us to now just sit down and say we have no avenue of expressing ourselves? Remember, there was a mandamano the threat to mandamano that was made by the opposition leader Raila Odinga, and actually the mandamanos that took place just right before the finance bill was tabled before parliament. That time when they were talking about having a housing levy at 3%, as a result of mandamano and the threat of further mandamanos, that figure came down to 1.5%, meaning that the government needed somebody to force them, push them to the corner, to actually get to the point of acting and listening to the problems of Kenyans. So this government that we have today, if you and I don't get out and actually speak out about the problems we are facing, speak out about the difficult life we are facing, let me tell you, the few likes of advice here who are earning big fat salaries and checks from government will sit here, tell us how government is working, and you and I, who are ordinary hustlers, will be back at home suffering every day, wondering how we will put food to the table.
I'm glad that he's here to defend himself. That makes it even more better now for me. Sure. Now, you were saying that Azimio parliamentarians were there and they voted no for this finance bill. But I remember on the day of voting day, they walked out. There's a section of Azimio parliamentarians who walked out. Don't you think that should they have been there in parliament to participate in this voting, would the outcome been different?
Well, one thing that you need to understand is that sometimes actions such as walking out is also a way of putting out a statement. It is a way of saying that, look, we don't totally agree with you. But I also agree with you because when it comes to members of parliament have duties and functions that have been constitutionally granted to them, and part of those duties and functions is to represent the interests of Mwananchi, that the interests of Mwananchi should always come first. What the Mwananchi were communicating to the Azimio faction and the members of parliament in general was vote no for this finance bill, because walking out is not a way of voting anyway, because there's nowhere in the standing orders of parliament where it is said that if you walk out, we will register that as a no. So I also agree with you that to some extent, some members of parliament allied to Azimio kind of failed us in a way, because they had a duty and responsibility to go to parliament and speak out. Even if they had the minority in terms of numbers, they had a duty to go there and represent us. I mean, for me, I'm one of those people who will sit here and tell you, if I am supporting, for instance, Azimio, I will not turn a blind eye to some of the negative things that they do, some of the things that they do that are not in the interest of the Mwananchi, because we must speak out. We must speak out on behalf of Mwananchi. We must call out wrong for wrong. We must apportion blame where blame ought to be apportioned, and praise where praise needs to be apportioned. And if you ask me, the government of the day to day, there's no bonga points they score on anything they have been doing so far, this past 9 or 8 months so far.
All right. Now, advice. Yeah. You mentioned something about dialogue between now the opposition and now the government. But now the conversation, I think the question now should not be about who will blink first between now the president and the opposition leader. Rather, who should do it first? Who will save the country between now the president and the opposition leader?
First of all, the business of saving the country is squarely the business of the president, because that is the person with a mandate from the people. The security and everything, the sovereignty of everyone has been able to bestow these on the president. So all of us believe that at the end of the day, the buck will always stop with the president. But then for avoidance of doubt, I would just want to clarify that I do not earn any salary from government. I'm not employed by the government. And I am still, you know, now in normal characteristic of people who just hate government. Now my sister Ruth is now heckling. So the thing is, I do not earn anything from the government. And two, I belong to the Azimio coalition. The difference between me and others is that I belong to the Azimio coalition, but I want to say the truth. Like that, one, we cannot sit here and say that the country doesn't have a president. We cannot sit and pretend like there is no government in the country. We can't keep saying open the servers and all these narratives. Why? Because our institutions have taken us to a place where they have said, wait a minute, you had this lorry of evidence, this is what you presented to us, we believed we won election, the institutions thought otherwise, and this was a president that the country has, and we must be able to move forward. We must be at a place where in this country, we have to know that elections come and go. We can't keep having that narrative every other time. Remember, we had over 300 members of parliament elected in this country. We had senators, we had governors. All these people were elected. I know of a member of parliament who lost his election by simply 96 votes. But just because that member of parliament lost by 96 votes, nobody is forcing that MP to have a conversation with the current MP so that they can be able to have a way forward for the constituency. So at the end of the day, it is not about every other time we must force the country into situations of election every other time. And my sister Ruth quotes 18th century examples to solve 21st century problems. I don't think that makes sense. Just because something happened in the 18th century does not mean we must stick to that dictate. There were times that fighting for the country needed to go so much because we didn't even have a constitution like the 2010 constitution, which provides that we can actually be able to canvass these issues in another way. So we must not stick to the mentality that just because if someone was able to beat up his wife and got her to respect him, it doesn't mean everyone should do the same. So we cannot be able to stick to those examples to solve today's problems. Look here, we have a place in this country today where we have the president himself formed the bipartisan committee. And mine is not about defending the government, but it's about us being very practical with our solutions. The bipartisan committee was formed so that we can be able to sit down as parliamentarians, canvass the problems, each one to come up with their own issues. Let us be able to have a way forward, which will then be presented in parliament, which will have a practical solution. Between that and going on the street, which one actually is able to solve the problems quicker? And we look at it, when we cannot always be able to make it look like our parliamentarians are goats or sheep, that they are bought every other time. These are people who are elected by these citizens of this country. They have a mandate, and that's why they are in parliament. The fact that we elected them means we trusted them to carry our hopes and aspirations. So when they make a decision, we can't turn back, and just because the decision does not please us, we quickly label them that they have been bought. My problem is that we have some people who always want to think that they know everything. First of all, they know that when they don't vote in parliament, they have a reason for it. When something again happens, they will tell you, government bought those people. You wonder. The intelligence of some people in opposition must be very high. They know what happens both in opposition and in government. At the end of the day, we must stop having these narratives that are not helpful. We must start having a conversation that is helpful. The finance bill was voted by 186 members of parliament. In opposition, the people who opposed that finance bill were less than half of that 186. The question becomes, Azimio has always said we have numbers, and that is true, and we have said that from day one. How did we marshal our numbers? Where was our responsibility? Before we run and blame other people and say they bought our people, my question is, can't we contain our people from being bought in the first place? So let us not take Kenyans on a wild goose chase, where we just want people to go on the street. Let me tell you, one of the easiest jobs to do is always to oppose government. It is very easy. You just need to rant. You just need to rant. And that is opposition of government. But we must be practical. So we have people in this country who have opposed all governments. But ranting about government does not stop it from functioning. We must come to a place where we critique the government towards it being beneficial to Mwananchi.
Article 7 of the Constitution allows them to picket, so we can't really squash the...
And I have not said they are not allowed. The law and the Constitution allows demonstrations, picketing. But every right has a responsibility. Yeah? Just because you are allowed to picket doesn't mean you must do that here at KUTV, you have a right to picket. But it's not every other day that workers at KUTV go to the director's or the manager's office to picket. We have issues that can be canvassed in a meeting. We have issues that can be canvassed on a memo.
Why
we have issues that
so the issue is taking to the streets.
So the issues that the opposition is now raising, my problem is these are issues that can be canvassed in another way. Remember, the president and the former prime minister were watching a football match together in Kasarani. So these are people who know each other. So at the end of the day, the reality is that these are people who can actually sit down and have a conversation. My problem is, why take people's children out in the streets for 3 days and block people's businesses, crash the economy of this country, continue pushing the country towards the drain in the name of we want to push it towards having a conversation. At the end of the day, I can assure you, there will be a conversation. I can assure at the end of the day, both the president, the former prime minister, they will meet and talk. My problem is, at that point then, why was there a need for all this to happen? Just because we have a right, to demonstrate. So businesses should not work every day just because there is a right to demonstrate.
And that brings us to the question, who should blink first?
It's not and I told you it's not a question of blinking. The responsibility of the country is in the hands of the president.
Yes.
It is not about anyone blinking first.
But now
the responsibility is in the hands of the...
Nobody wants
there is no and that supremacy battle is the problem.
And you're very right.
There should be no battle. There is one president in the country. There should be no supremacy battle. There is one president in the country. We must all be able to see how can we ensure that the president delivers for all of us, because he's using our taxes, and everything that the president enjoys is not a privilege that is in isolation. It is taxpayers' money. So all of us must see to it that he delivers. But I can assure you, some people are more interested in ensuring that he fails just because they want to have a successful campaign in 2027.
One thing that I agree with advice is that the fact that the buck stops with the president.
At least we agree on something.
No. And he says, and I'm going to come back to that point, and he says that it is not about a supremacy battle. And by the way, for Azimio, it has never been a supremacy battle. It has always been what advice is saying, that how can the president make sure he's working for the Kenyans? And when you see now people going to the streets and taking to the streets and Raila Odinga leading the demonstrations, it is evidence that the president has failed to do what he ought to be doing, which is to ensure that the lives of Kenyans and Mwananchi is bearable enough. I'll tell you for sure that times have been tough, even during Uhuru Kenyatta's regime, and he's put it out very, he's put it out in a very succinct way, in a correct way, that during the campaigns, Azimio campaigns, the narrative was, and that was the reality, that the cost of living was high because of the war in Ukraine and very many other factors such as COVID. But the difference between Uhuru Kenyatta, the former president, and the current president right now is the manner in which they handled the lives of the Mwananchi, the concern that they had for the lives of the Mwananchi today as we speak. Because the difference between the two of them is that one actually cared and the other has absolutely zero care for the people. The one who cared, Uhuru Kenyatta, had even plans and functions and programs to cushion the lives of Mwananchi from the tough economic times that Mwananchi were facing because of COVID. Remember, there was even a time when taxes were lowered and in certain categories taxes were completely removed so that Mwananchi could be able to live comfortably. But now we have a president who, understanding that the times are difficult and the times are difficult for everybody and things are rough, instead of coming up with solutions that would make the lives of the Mwananchi easier, this gentleman of ours, who is our very good president and we love him and we respect him, comes up with plans to make life even more difficult. And when he says, and when he talks and says that, that Raila Odinga is taking people's children to the streets, I wonder what kind of Kenya he lives in or which country he lives in, because he fails to understand. And that's why I was saying they've turned a blind eye to the interests of the Mwananchi. Today, even that person who voted for William Ruto as president is saying that if I had a chance to go to the streets, I would go. And some of them are actually joining the Mandamanos. If you do an audit of the last Mandamano that was done last week on Wednesday, there were people who actually voted for the president who took to the streets because they were saying this gentleman during the campaigns promised a number of things. And it was not just during the campaigns. During his swearing in, he kept saying, hii Biblia nikiweka chini tu hivi, the price of unga will go down. Once I put down this Bible, meaning that immediately I'm sworn in, the price of gas will go down. And the problem we have as Kenyans, and even those who supported him, if you listen to them very carefully, they will tell you that this is a man who cannot keep his word. And as a leader, the worst thing you can ever do to the people that you lead is never keeping your word. When you tell Kenyans that, 3 months from now, the price of gas will go down. It's been 4 months, 5 months, nothing is happening. When you tell Kenyans during a Madaraka celebration that they will all get scholarships to go to Arizona University, nobody has ever posted their certificate of graduation from Arizona University. When you tell Kenyans that, we are going to create job opportunities for you, and yet the reality on the ground right now is that companies, big multinational companies that were employing a lot of Kenyans are pulling out. When you tell Kenyans that, you care about the welfare of the young people and you will ensure they have jobs, and then you find out where they get their sources of income, which is the social media platforms, TikTok and YouTube, and you begin to chase them right where they make their source of living, because there's no other platform that is available for them to earn a living. We are not saying that do not tax Kenyans, but we are saying that as you're taxing Kenyans, are you aware that there are alternative solutions that you could actually, measures that you could put up that would ensure the lives of the mwananchi is actually made a bit more bearable? And by the way, this is a conversation I have had with so many border guys as a hustler now, because personally, I quit the corporate world. I realized that, you cannot survive as a corporate girlie right now in this country. You must have a side hustle. Right now, I can fully say I'm a hustler, not politically in terms of political inclinations, but by a way of my lifestyle. Now I run a business. And on a daily basis, I cannot afford to do Ubers, as I used to. Now I take borders to wherever meetings I need to go to deliver things. And on these border rides, definitely you will have conversations with the border people. And they tell you narratives. The story is always consistent that most border guys take their borders on loan. And they have to take these loans, they have to pay back these loans either on weekly installments or monthly installments. So the border guy asks you, if today my loan is due today, and my wife and kid are asking for food they were asking food for the day and Pampers for the kid, what will I do? What choice do I have? Do I pay the loan and leave my family to go hungry, or do I feed my family and lose my border in the process? So Kenyans are finding themselves in positions where they have to make very difficult decisions, and that is why you're finding the rate of mental health cases going up, people committing suicide, killing themselves and killing their family members because they cannot bear the brunt of these tough economic times, and the president is not making it any easier. So when we find an avenue to express ourselves, kindly allow us to express ourselves. Restrain yourself from using excessive force on people who are simply demonstrating. And we also understand and know from previous confessions by members of parliament who have been politicians who have been in government before, who told us in the past that formerly in the past previous times when ODM and Raila Odinga's political factions would hold maandamano, government would actually bring to those maandamanos, would ferry people who would serve as goons in those maandamanos to paint the people who would be peaceful demonstrators as people who are causing chaos and violence. So what would make us be sure right now that the people causing violence and chaos at these rallies are actually members of the opposition? So we must ask ourselves tough and difficult questions, knowing the kind of forgery that happens in our current political scene, knowing the kind of tricks that politicians do. We must also ask ourselves these tough questions. Is it the demonstrators destroying property, or are these people who have been ferried to be part of the demonstrations and we genuinely know they are not part of the demonstrations? So tough questions must be asked.
Now, Ruth, and of course advice, but I want to begin with you, Ruth. Now, Raila Odinga's security, as well as that of other opposition leaders, have been removed. Now, where does this place the country now that it is legally right for them to have the security personnel, but now they've been taken away because of these maandamanos? Where does that put the country?
The pettiness of the government, the failure of the government to clearly just admit and say, guys, we see what you're trying to, we hear what you're trying to communicate. We see what you're trying to tell us. And as a result of this, we are conceding to the following things. It is simply pettiness. How do you describe, for instance, the mother to the former president's security being withdrawn? What does she have to do with this? How is she involved in these mandamanos? How do you describe, for instance, how do you even explain, like in one of the previous mandamanos that took place earlier on in the year, when one of the UDA officials made a statement and said, if you are planning mandamanos, then we are also going to attack your businesses. And the next day, the office of the company belonging to Raila Odinga's family and the office of his wife was stoned. The stone missed her by an inch. How do you describe these things? And yet, these are women who are just genuinely going about their business, and their lives are now at risk. So for me, I find it the highest level of pettiness. It is the highest form of disregard to listening to what Kenyans are talking about. And if anything, it is meant to even incite people even more, because now people are now going to be very cautious tomorrow, thinking our party leader's life is in danger. And right now, you cannot make such threats to Kenyans right now. You cannot afford to make such take such steps and actions that would make people agitated even more than they are right now. Remember, these are people who have a huge following. Raila Odinga is a man who has a huge following. So if anything were to happen to his life, whether intended by government or not, by virtue of his security being withdrawn, you can imagine the repercussions. I'm not threatening anybody, but I'm just telling you that you understand. This is a man with a huge following, and you cannot control what your followers would do if something were to happen to your life as a politician. People go crazy for politicians. Even the president himself, if his life was in danger, you understand that there are people who are diehard followers of the president, and if his life was in danger, they would do anything to just, express how much they love their president. So we must be cautious in how we handle the people who want to express themselves. We must avoid being petty as a country, because pettiness might sound like it is pettiness on the surface level, but at the end of the day, it aggravates people who are already aggravated beyond the levels of reasonable thinking and reasonable actions when the maandamanos begin.
Advice. Security. Naila, it's no more. What do you make of it?
That is extremely unfortunate, to be very honest, because one of the problems we are having in this country is changing goalposts because of change of government. We need to be at a place in this country where we have things that should not be affected. Yeah, because is like when you are a president and then you are a former president. What is your right should remain so, regardless of what your opinion is, because that is your right. It's the security of the former Prime Minister, Kalonzo Musyoka, they have that security by right. And therefore, that should not be affected, regardless of what their opinion is. But then, it should also paint a picture to the young people of this country to know that as we go for these demonstrations, usually, we have some of us who have security. We have some of us who are actually protected. That is what many of them would not have known in the beginning. And that's why I'm saying we always have another way that these issues can be canvassed. These are people who have security from this same government. And that's why you're saying government has withdrawn, which means it is the same government that is protecting these people. Meaning all these people are part and parcel of the government. Therefore, they can actually be able to have a conversation. Why take innocent young people out there on demonstrations when they can be running their businesses? Why take them out there when you actually have security? These demonstrations would be better. You see what happened in South Africa when Julius Malema was leading the demonstration. There were actually no vehicles. And all the protesters were on the road and they walked peacefully and protested.
Because the police gave them the opportunity to exercise their rights.
Ruth is now heckling. She has talked for half a day. I did not interrupt.
What are we not doing right as a country?
So that's what I'm saying. That is what I'm saying. The problem is that everything we are doing is purely political expediency. Someone wants to score political bonga points because Kenyans are suffering. Someone wants to just be able to uplift themselves and make themselves bigger politically on the backs of struggling Kenyans. Because just because there is a problem today, and that's why I agree that the people demonstrating are not necessarily Azimio followers, because the problem and of the cost of living is with everybody. Everybody is actually struggling. Now the question is, as a responsible leader, do we look for a solution or do we take advantage of the situation so that we can paint ourselves politically good? And that's why when you look at our demonstrations, the nature of our demonstrations in this country, it has the haves and the have-nots. We have people who are in armored vehicles, complete with bulletproof jackets. And then we have innocent young people who are out there, direct in line. They have nothing. They have left a family at home that basically is struggling to survive. They do not know where the next meal is coming from, and that's really why they're there. But then we have their leaders who are in armored vehicles. They are very protected. Apart from the protection of the vehicles and they are bulletproof, they have a ring of security personnel protecting them, and they're walking around with these young people in the name of doing demonstrations. I think that is unfortunate and that is wrong. Let us be able to do, if we really need to do demonstrations, let us be able to do them peacefully, and let us leave our vehicles at home and our security at home, and let us go out there and demonstrate. But what is happening right now, this is purely political expediency, and I have kept saying there can always be another way to it. Because I can assure you, William Ruto worked with Raila Odinga before. These were people who were both in ODM. So these people have worked together before. We have seen the call of the ambassadors today, calling for there to be a truce between the two leaders so that we can be able to move the country forward. And let me ask you, when Raila Odinga and William Ruto speak, will the cost of living go down the following day? It will actually not, but demonstrations will stop. That paints to the reality that this is actually not about the Kenyans. It is purely about political expediency and political optics.
But do you agree with that, Vice, that the conversation in this Mandamano is not about the cost of living? Because now that is why the Azimio coalition is in the streets.
You know, one thing that Raila has been very clear about this time round is that he's not interested in a handshake, and so has the government said the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so if there's any conversation to be had, it is a conversation about the cost of living and the interest of the common mwananchi. And you know, one of the things that I like that he has said is that, you know, if the demonstrations were to, if Raila Odinga and William Ruto were to sit down, that the cost of living will not go down, and if the demonstrations were to continue, not at least, definitely also the cost of living will not go down. And I disagree with him, because if the demonstrations continue, government will have to listen. It will get to a point where government will realize that this thing is too costly, and it is costing us our returns, daily returns as a country. It is costing us our state of stability, and so we have to listen. So in fact, if you were to ask me, the government should act fast enough, and if they do not, demonstrations should continue until they listen. Because at the end of the day, these conversations, as he has put it right, if they sit down and talk, unless they're talking about the cost of living and the lives of the common mwananchi, then we are not benefiting our citizens. And that is why you see Raila Odinga saying, we are going to demonstrate. They will demonstrate up until that point where the government will listen. And up until, for as long as Advice here and his government counterparts make it look like demonstrations are dangerous, make it look like demonstrations, everybody should drop their security back at home. You know, for me as a concerned Kenyan, I ask myself, what exactly is the government's motive when it comes to the lives of Kenyans? Because when you start saying, oh, you know, Kenyans are putting their lives at risk, does it mean that the government is so intentional on killing Kenyans during these demonstrations, police are so intentional on finishing Kenyans, shooting them with live bullets, such that a Kenyan should be so worried about demonstrating? Because that is the point he's putting across, that we are very ready to kill you for as long as you continue demonstrating. And that is a point that is so, I mean, for me it is so disturbing, because basically what you're trying to tell us is that we also do not care about you. We do not care about you, and we shall use any force necessary to stop you. And we don't care whether you are demonstrating or not. Because remember, there was a time when demonstrations were being done at Kisumu, I think, again, earlier on this year, around March, when the demonstrations about IBC, the IBC team, before the formation of the bipartisan talks team, the demonstrations in Kisumu, a young girl who was on a border going back to school was shot dead. She was not participating in the demonstrations. How do you explain that? That is explainable by, the only way you can explain that is to say, we have a government that is so intent on shooting anybody seen near a crowd of people demonstrating. And as a result of that, we should be concerned as Kenyans. And that is why I will keep insisting, we have a government that does not care about the people. We have a president that actually does not love his people, because if you loved your people, number one, you would guarantee them their rights to demonstrate without having to involve police. Because what happens is that when the demonstrations turn ugly, they turn ugly when police begin confronting with the citizens. Had they been allowed to demonstrate peacefully, and that is the point I was trying to interject before he said that on the South African case example, before he said that I was heckling. I mean, I was only trying to fact check him. Today on any political commentation debate, if you try to fact check a government person or somebody who is a government sympathizer, they will tell you are heckling. And the truth of the matter is that in South Africa, the reason why they had peaceful demonstrations is because the police let people do their thing. The police recognized the right to demonstrate by South Africans. And by the way, earlier on, my brother here had said that, you know, why would we want to employ 19th century tactics to be able to solve 21st century problems? And I remember one young man at one of those BBI forums once criticized the president for using 18th century solutions to solve 21st century problems, when the president introduced the wheelbarrow as his symbol of his party and also as his tool of trying to empower the lives of young people. And I look at my brother here and I ask him, he would comfortably give the example of South Africa, a country that just less than 20 years ago fought and went to the streets less than a decade ago, went to the streets to fight for their own freedom from apartheid, and they actually demonstrated. This is less than 20 years ago. So is 20 years ago 18th century solutions to 21st century problems? That is a question I would love for my brother here to answer before, without saying that I am heckling, when facts become too hot for him to handle.
All right, we are working on borrowed time, but now in less than a minute, I want you to tell me now, what is the way forward now for Kenya? Because now it looks like there is chest pumping, what analysts would call it, between the Kenya Kwanza government and the Azimio coalition. Of course, Kenya Kwanza government is issuing threats, while Azimio remains firm that they're not going to be moved, that the Maandamano is going to be on no matter what. So in less than 1 minute, what is the way forward?
The way forward for me is the president needs to do his job. The president needs to get some level of care for the people. I know he's a praying man, or so he says. I mean, when you look at the kind of actions and the kind of decisions he's making, one would even doubt his prayerfulness, but I'm not one to judge a Christian. That is between him and God. But if he truly loves God, as he says he does, he really needs to come back, listen to the Kenyans. He really needs to go a step behind, take some steps back, and reflect on the kind of promises he made to Kenyans. If he fulfills even a quarter of those promises, trust me, we will not be on the streets. Solution is the president needs to do his work and truly just have some little care for the lives of the common mwananchi and for the future of this country.
Advice, less than a minute.
Thank you, Anne. Less than a minute is such a short time for me to respond to so many issues. But I think
closing, by the way.
I think the most important thing is that I'm happy that you guys wish me well. You started by yourself calling me party leader.
Inshallah.
And Ruth has finished by calling me senior government official. So I think that is good. But then, be that as it may, at the end of the day, the president needs to know that he came to the presidency because of the hustler narrative. It is a narrative of the young people. And that's why the expectations are too high. The reason why people are overreacting about these issues, maybe the reaction would not be the same if the situation remained constant and it was another government. It is this way because the expectations of the young people are on the high. And therefore, he must really try and ensure he delivers for these young people. But be that as it may, young people must know that not everything politicians are calling them to is beneficial to them. What demonstrations do is purely political expediency. They have zero influence in terms of the real solutions. People who know and want to canvass the reality of the solutions, they know where to do that. Okiya Omtatah stopped the finance bill, there was no demonstration. Nobody died. We had someone who went to court, stopped the appointment of 50 chief administrative secretaries. It didn't need maandamano, nobody died, nobody was able to be inflicted pain, and no business was able to close. So let Azimio look for practical solutions and not political expediency.
All right. Thank you so much, Ruth Ambogo and Advice Mundalo. Ruth, by the way, is a lawyer. I had mentioned that when we were starting. And Advice Mundalo is the National Youth Chairman, Jubilee Party. He said that himself. So we are taking. Thank you very much for making time for us.
You can't say I say that myself. that is purely illegitimizing.
Okay.
Me, you can't say I said that myself.
So. Now, we are taking a very short break. We're coming back with sports, so stay with us. Now in the world of sports, Team Kenya began their residential training camp on Tuesday at Kasarani ahead of upcoming Commonwealth Youth Games, that is for the year 2023, slated for next month in Port of Spain in Trinidad and Tobago. Triathlon, rugby, cycling and swimming are among the teams that reported to residential training camp to prepare for the delayed Commonwealth Games, with over 50 athletes expected to fly Kenyan flag in Trinidad and Tobago at the same time. The future of 2026 Commonwealth Games hangs on the balance after host nation Australia pulled out due to financial blowouts that would have forced organizers to dig deeper into their pockets. And finally, Kenya is ready to receive tender application from eligible and competent firms for the upgrade of 3 stadiums, that is Moi Sports Centre, Kasarani, Nyayo Stadium and Kipchoge Keino Stadium in Eldoret, to meet international standards. Kenya presented the 3 stadiums to African Cup of Nations organizers in a joint bid with Uganda and Tanzania to host the Continental Showpiece for the first time in East Africa. The eligible bidders will be tasked with the responsibility of transforming the 3 facilities to meet the required FIFA standards, including laying a synthetic track and a properly functioning floodlight media center and an upgrade of VVIP areas. Alright, that brings us to the end of our bulletin tonight. Many thanks indeed for keeping us company. Be sure to stay tuned for subsequent bulletins. Tomorrow you'll be joined by Joseph Cass and DENIS OMONDI for Mizizi ya Habari and Primetime News. My name is Ann Odida. I'm in the company of Evans Odhiambo, our sign language interpreter tonight. Have a good night and see you next week, inshallah.